What's up, team? Welcome back to the show, talking about performance. I'm here with Kevin I. You guys know Kevin because he's been on the show before, and any chance I get to sit down with Kevin and kind of pick his brain, I'm going to take it. So today is about a short episode. We got about 30 minutes. And first, tell us what's going on. We're hanging out. We're in Denver. What are you doing in Denver?
Great part of the country to be in. You know, I was out here for some CFSC work, and then we're shooting over to Utah to work with Vasa Fitness. With Brendan Rarick and Brett Bartholomew and Tim Anderson, and able to score a couple extra days here in Denver, so we got to get outside, hike a little bit, and you know, it's a good city. So
we did a fun loop yesterday. We went, tell them what we did.
We did all around Rocky Mountain National Park. So we did Trail Ridge Road, jumped off cold places, hiked, managed to go like the whole perimeter of the park. So it's pretty good, full day, nice day though. We got good weather. So
Kev planned it out, kind of. He was the trail guy, the leader. I just went with him, taking notes, kind of trying to pick his brain the whole time. And that's what I want to do a little bit today. You're one of those guys who's constantly moving forward, constantly new projects. I love it. So any chance that we get to kind of, hey, Kevin, what's going on? What are you doing this summer? What's on your brain? What kind of projects? So we've got about 30 minutes. Let's kind of take it wherever we want to go with it. What are you up to this summer?
You know, lots of continuing trying to build CFSC, you know, travel, doing a lot of that, but then you know, we'll dive right back in next week into Mike Boyle's Strength and Conditioning. Our summer program starts on Monday. Our interns start on this Monday. So we'll start getting them up to speed, go through staff training for the next week. And then the week after that, we go right into our performance program. So all our athletes, a lot of our college and pro guys are back. But then the high school kids will start to roll in, and we'll be going on full gears right through August. So just put the coaching hat on, really,
right,
through most of summer. Some CFSC events, but in the summer it's really just weekends, so you can kind of be at home and be at the gym. So I'm looking forward to diving right back into that. You know.
Right. Yeah, you're a practitioner, and that's what's kind of neat is everybody kind of with CFSC, Mike included, really does a nice job going out into the industry and coaching coaches and being an influencer and a teacher. But you also really stay true to, hey, I've got to take clients. I'm still going to coach groups, and I love that.
Yeah. Well, I think that's how you stay in touch. And obviously, as you grow in the industry, you don't want to be turning 80 hours a week on the floor. That's not a sustainable way to work. But also, if you don't do any, you become really stuck. And you mentioned Mike, and I think the reason Mike has been able to continue to grow, he always says, I reserve the right to change my mind, even in his 50s now. And he's been doing this for a long time, and he's always pushing us to continue to try new things. But I think that's a result of him being active and actively looking for better solutions to the problems that he sees in the gym every day. And that's something I try to always remember, like, hey, you got to go back and stay down in the dirt a little bit,
right?
You know, and do some work. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
That's like Gary Vaynerchuk concept: clouds and dirt.
Yeah, you got to be on both sides of it, you know.
Right.
So.
Well, speaking of that, I went to the MBSC, went through seminar, and kind of two big things that I know that the kind of MBSC family is working on this year, or that has been on your mind and Mike's mind, is culture and conditioning. Mm-hmm. So Mike just released a youth conditioning product, and today you actually just published a video about modified Cooper's test.
Yeah.
So this is kind of one of those things in the performance field that's somewhat hard to understand, at least in my experience, because we've got so many different terminology looking at anaerobic, aerobic, alactic, lactic. Is it really lactate? Is it, we could dive deep into a rabbit hole. But the one of the things I love about the MBSC program and the way that you work is KISS. Let's keep it simple, right? So we want an athlete to get started with conditioning. What are we looking at? Are we doing any tests leading up to get some data? Do we need heart rate monitors? Do we not need heart rate monitors? Tell us where you're at with it.
Well, just kind of going back to what you said first is I think it's easy to get confused. It's easy to make yourself confused, and it's even easier to confuse others when you talk about a lot of stuff. And I think it's important to understand like basic exercise physiology, but at the same time, the more we can make it simple and avoid divisive language, like where you're kind of using your own terms,
right?
Because like I think a lot of us want the same things, but we want to do it our own way, right? Mm-hmm. But if we can make it very simple, so it's not about us sounding smart, and make it easier for everyone to understand, and then make it easier for the lay person to, hey, if I go on the internet, I want to learn how to condition myself because I can't afford a personal trainer. Like if I'm throwing around a bunch of physiological terms, it's going to be even harder for them to get through that. So the big thing is trying to make it simple. And I think sometimes you got to get past the ego. And Mike does a much better job even than me or any of the other guys in the NBA scene doing this, is he really parses it down to as simple as possible. So that's the first thing. Is I think it's easy to get caught up. It's sometimes nice to read all that stuff, but then it's easy to get caught up in the language, and then it's harder to understand. And sometimes I think people are talking like you don't even know what you're saying.
Right.
You know, but kind of from a practical standpoint, like you said, I've been posting a lot about heart rate based conditioning training and things like that, and I get a lot of questions from people, kind of asking me like, well, how do you determine intensity, or how do you determine recovery? So I figured I'd dedicate a few episodes to assessment, and then actually showing interval work, like me getting on the bike or an athlete getting on the bike, or doing running, and then understanding, okay, look at the heart rate monitor. We want to see them reach down to X number, or we want to see them recover so much in between each bout. Because I think you have to show them practically. It's very hard to just write it down on paper, and then for people to be able to take that and be like, okay, how do I go execute?
Right.
So I just wanted to create some videos for people to understand that. And the modified Cooper's test is a really easy time trial on the bike, about 7 minutes, that you can get a lot of usable data from. You can get threshold heart rate, you can get max aerobic speed, so you can determine the maximum intensity you want someone at when they're doing interval work on the bike, and then their recovery in between. So it's fairly simple, very practical, and then we actually have a chart, which I'll work into some of these videos, that helps you determine the right number, right, for people to work at. So, because you just don't want people blindly doing interval work as hard as they can,
right,
but then you don't want them going slow either, so you got to pick a number for them, right? And you'll have a group of people who always work so hard they'll bury themselves. You have a group of people who will always kind of dog it, whereas if you can assess and give them the right number, then everyone's going to get the right intervention, and that's really what you want. Right.
So is that to say that almost all athletes should have heart rate monitors?
Yeah, absolutely. I think now for me it's almost a non-option to not have one.
Right.
Because they're cheap, they're durable, okay, they're very easy and user friendly. Like we use the MyZone system, and it's like done by colors. Like you don't even need to look at the numbers. I say, hey, just wait till you get to the blue, wait till you get to the green.
Nice.
And then, hey, I don't want you to go past the yellow. Like make it as simple as you can.
Right.
Right, and it's enhanced all of our training in MBSC, whether it's with general population or with athletes. It just makes it much more accurate, easy, and user friendly.
And you have all those screens on the wall now that can actually show the heart rate. So while you're doing your work, you can look up and see what zone you're in.
Yeah, well, it's amazing because we'll have some athletes, and like you'll be running tempos, and I have all these guys running together, and I'll be like, hey, you got to recover back down to green, right? And I'll have some guys who are like 30 seconds, they're there, I'm like, all right, go. And then I'll have these other guys have to wait like 90 seconds to go. And if we try to keep them just on a time interval, one guy's not working hard enough, one guy's probably working way too hard. Whereas if I can give them, a specialized approach by them just looking at the screen, then everybody wins.
This is such a huge point, because so many people just, hey, what should I do for conditioning? What should I do for conditioning? It's like, well, first, what's your resting heart rate? We need to know that. I mean, if we have an athlete that's at 65 beats a minute, what's that going to tell us versus an athlete who's down at 40 beats a minute?
Yeah, I mean, it's especially important very early on in the training, right? So like when they first come in the off season, a lot of these guys, they won't be completely out of shape, but they'll be deconditioned maybe compared to where they might be at the end of summer, right? So you want to be very spot on, okay, let's hit them at the right heart rates. Then towards the end of the summer, this is something we talked about the other day, it might make sense to go towards time-based conditioning towards the end, because when these guys come back to the NHL, they can be like, hey coach, can't go back out on my shift because like my heart rate, I'm still in the yellow. Right. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
So you eventually you got to adapt the heart rate to the time interval. Right. But if they're in shape and you're getting them in shape over the summer, that shouldn't be a problem. Right. But early on, to make sure you're not like burying these guys like third sprint in, they're like, oh, I'm freaking dying. Right. Or on the other side, we see people going through the warm up, and they're steadily like heart rate's elevated. And I'm like, okay, take a break before you go throw that med ball again. Right, because I want to actually get power out of that. So it just makes you more accurate in a lot of these things you might be able to tell by intuition if you're a coach, if you're paying attention to athletes. But if you can see the numbers and then they can see the numbers, then it goes a long way. And it's like $100 for a heart rate monitor, so it's worth the money.
So basic data would be resting heart rate, and then we would want to do a Cooper's test to get max aerobic speed, and we would want to measure how long it takes to get from max heart rate down to what would you call that?
Yeah, so 1 minute heart rate recovery is just a good measure of aerobic fitness. And if you see somebody who gets up and then it takes them like a couple minutes to get down like 30, 40 beats, like that's someone who isn't like replenishing oxygen quick enough, right? Whereas if you have someone who can in a minute drop down like 40 beats plus. Like, that's pretty good.
Right.
So it just helps you kind of know, okay, where are people at? Or from a stress standpoint, it's just like a readiness. Like, some days if I'm like all jacked up, travel, jet lag, didn't sleep good, my recovery's not gonna be as good, or my resting heart rate might be a little bit higher. So just from a readiness standpoint, we're foam rolling and I see everyone's heart rate every day, like they're like 60, 65, they're always around the same place.
Right.
And then I see some guy come in one day and 70 something. I'm like, okay, well, why are you jacked up today?
Right.
And then you just kind of take notes of these things. So it's there's just more data, and then data's only good if you make use of it. So then kind of getting it all together and then helping to make decisions.
So those are 3 very easy data points.
Yeah, very simple.
What do you make of these newer technologies like the rings and the Whoop and the things that really get a lot of data, like HRV and recovery? And
again, I think data is great, and then it's just how are you going to aggregate it and make use of it. Like, you can be paralyzed by it, and sometimes I think data can get people to become very dogmatic or like think very closed, like they have blinders on, right? And that's not the point. It's supposed to open up your eyes to everything, right? So you don't turn your back on your coaching intuition, your conversations, and your experience, but you put all that together to help you make a decision, right? So I think sometimes people get paralyzed by it, but find out what works for you. I think every setting and every population, every coach is going to have different use of different data points, right? Like, I'm in a private setting with a bunch of high school kids mostly, so really big data collection doesn't make a lot of sense for me, because it's hard enough to get these kids to just like tie their shoes and like show up on time, right? So if I have to ask them to go to the iPad and fill stuff out on their own, like, that's a battle I'm not always going to be willing to fight. But if there's some simple ones like RPE plus the heart rate data, and then my conversations with them, that works. But if you're in a setting where you have more control, like you're in a professional team setting, like some of the guys we were with this week, like, that's part of their job. These guys have to do all that. So then you can make use of the stuff. It's going to be more accurate. And every setting and every environment's going to be different. But I think you just got to try it and see what works for you. But I think you have to look at something. You can't not look at anything.
And would that change with a very elite athlete versus a beginner level athlete?
Absolutely. I mean, a beginner athlete, I think you're just going to focus on the basics. You're not going to worry about too much. And you don't want to train them from a very early age to just think about the numbers that they see, right? As in any career, things get more complex as you progress on in any field, right? So as you kind of grow, I think you start to add those data points in. But for like my 12-year-old kids, like, if I have them checking the belt and like, I don't even get a belt for those kids. Like, just come in and play around, right? We'll worry about this stuff as you get older, and then just continually progress that.
Now maybe take that into what we were talking about the other day with like these super elite athletes that they like less is more. We just need to keep them healthy. We don't need to be. You remember the other night when we had dinner? You kind of that versus one of those guys that just thinks they need to grind, they need to put in more work, and that they may not be quite as talented. The role of a strength coach. How do you kind of recognize what? When to pull back and when to add more.
So this kind of came from the conversations of us talking about training like NFL guys and like really elite athletes, and you realize that lots of times when you get some of these pro guys and they're already going to the pros or they're an elite college level, is you didn't make that body. They that's given from however we believe they were created. That's how they got that body, and that's how they got those technique. That's all those gifts and those talents. And our job is to enhance what they have to the point of like, hey, I want to make sure that you feel good every day. I want to make sure you can go back and practice every day. I want to make sure you can practice those sports skills. When you wake up in the morning, I want you to not hurt as much as you would if you didn't see me. Right? And I think sometimes we get so caught up in performance, that you start to sacrifice their health or their longevity because you want to keep loading these people. And I've seen like NFL guys come through our career, through our facility, 10-year career. And I just remember Mike saying to me, our job's just to get him to another contract, get him to another year. Right? Because if he shows up with his talents and the strength level that we're going to maintain with him and the power level we're going to maintain with him and continue to make sure he moves well, mostly, then he'll keep playing. And that's the most important thing. And 10 years in the NFL or a 13-year career in the NHL I've seen guys have with us, it's about, okay, how can we make sure you feel good? Because guys don't want to play a sport if they hurt. Right? And if you're beating the hell out of them in the weight room, and drilling them more than they need to be, and then they go off their field and they're like, I don't feel good. And it's not going to be a good situation for them. So I mean, just make sure they're not getting weaker, and make sure their body feels good, and you've probably done your job. I think sometimes we overstate what we think we need to do.
Right.
Now, sometimes you have these guys like our grinders. Like we have a lot of these guys at AHL, NHL, back and forth on the line, and those guys are going to work hard, but still, health is priority one.
Right.
Then you go down the list of performance, right? So, yeah, and maybe some of these guys need a little bit extra to get over the hump, but sometimes it's not necessarily they're like, oh, they're not powerful enough. That it's usually like a body size issue, too small, too thin, whatever. And we try to build those, but just get them healthy. The biggest, what does they say? The best ability is availability.
Right.
I don't know who was a football coach. I don't know what coach said that, but they said like the best ability is availability. Can they get on the field?
Right.
And that's our job, is to make sure that they're available to get on the field and they feel good.
Right.
So always kind of focus on that first.
Yeah, and that's kind of a battle I think I experience a lot. Is a lot of people show up to sessions with a ton of energy. They're like, oh, Tim's got energy. Like, we're gonna go hard. We're gonna lift hard. And it's like, wait a second. Is that really what you need? No. You know, your sport coach wants you to just grind doing these skills nonstop. So a lot of times it's our job to make the athlete feel better so they can be available. Mm-hmm. And that's another reason that getting that basic heart rate data makes sense, right? Because we know if this athlete is overtrained, or we can, those grinders, we could say, hey, I need you to stay in the green or red or whatever it is, or below 165, mm-hmm. So that we don't cross that threshold. And I think that's kind of a cool segue to, this less is more / like the strength and power side of things. When we look at a simple program like the MBSC strength program, I would call it simple. Yeah. Versus some of these newer things that, we look at and say, is it really necessary? For example, triphasic training. And Cal is a tremendous strength coach, and we've learned a lot from him. But when it comes to just the majority of athletes with a training age, let's say 0 to 3, where do you stand on do we really need to isolate eccentrics and isometrics and really go down that rabbit hole, or can we just keep it simple and stay brilliant at the basics?
Well, I think any beginning athlete would benefit greatly from 3 years of concentrated strength training focused on just adding muscle before they chase any qualities that are related to their sport.
Right.
Most people just need that, and that's a tall order for a lot of people. Because a lot of people don't start lifting weights. We have kids who come in high school, is probably like middle of high school is the average age.
Right.
So then they get into college, and then they kind of have, if they keep coming back, then they'll get better by the time they come to college. But if they're just lifting in college, typically their strength training education might be a little flawed.
Right.
And then continuing through their career, if you're an athlete, you're only training in small blocks, right? So I always tell people, like, the majority of your people you're going to train, it's hard to have a long period dedicated to training where you could really get fancy with periodization, like some of these models you might mention, right? Because typically, if you're in high school, hopefully they're multi-sport athletes, so you have in between seasons, you have in season, you might, like our summer is going to be like maybe a 16-week block, okay? Then they're going back to their sport, right? And if these kids are playing hockey, they're probably also playing hockey over the summer, so there's a lot going on. Then when you have professional guys, like, you just have one off season, the end of season. So it's like you don't have these long blocks to say, hey, we're going to focus just on this quality, not on this quality, and do kind of block programming. We found a lot of success being concurrent and putting everything in, and then doing a little bit of weighting in different phases. Like, hey, we're going to focus a little bit more on tempo work in this condition, this phase. Then we're going to work a little bit more on this aerobic power type stuff on the bike. Then we're going to do a little bit more contrast work towards the end of the phases before the end of the summer. Do some power focus. So, but there's a thread of everything through everything we're doing, and we found more success there because the program can be a little more simple and a little more balanced because schedules are unpredictable. Everything's unpredictable. So if there's less technical things that can go wrong and there's less variables, it's easier to manage an athlete. I don't want to make it more difficult for my coaches and for the people that are coming in there.
Totally.
Right? And when you talk about the triphasic, I like the overall idea. I think any good program will focus on all parts of a contraction, right? Like, I think everyone should get some sort of isometric piece in their training. I think that's valuable, right? Then I think there should be some sort of eccentric focus. That's one piece, right? To be able to get the tissue to be able to tolerate taking on a load like that. And then obviously a huge part of what we do is going to focus on the concentric piece and then the power output. And he's built a model, Cal's built a model that really works for him because that's his setting.
Right.
And he has control there. And that's what I think people, you always have to understand context.
Right.
Because that is his model that he works there with his people. Like he gave you his cookbook.
Right.
You might not have the same kitchen as him. You don't have the same ingredients.
Right.
You don't have the ingredients he has at university. Trust me. Most people don't. And you don't have the control and the setting, the environment. So as strength and conditioning a whole, this is a message. You take that cookbook that he gave you and say, okay, what can I take from this for my kitchen?
Right.
And build like what I want. And that's what I was able to get from that, right?
Right.
And I think everybody's going to be able to take different pieces, bigger, smaller, their own interpretations, and that's fine. I generally think it's going to make them better.
Right.
Right. But I always, like I said, this is my Perform Better presentation, and that was that, like, don't get caught looking over the fence. Like the guy in Home Improvement, what's his name? Wilson.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I think you're always looking in the neighbor's yard, the other strength coach's yard.
Right.
And you're like, oh, I should be doing that.
Right.
You're like, well, what's your yard look like? You don't have room for a pool.
Right.
Right? Like, do the best you can with what you have, and do
Right.
the best you can with your environment, and you're going to build the best program that way. When you don't, I think you end up having a mess in the weight room, and that's what happens all the time.
Right.
You know, so.
That's awesome. I love that analogy.
Yeah.
And that's the context, right? Like Cal is working with elite level, high training age athletes he's trying to prepare mostly to go on to play professional sports. And that's very different from these high school athletes or, a lot of my site members, because a lot of these athletes just haven't ever trained before.
Yeah.
But they see a fancy word like triphasic, and they kind of gravitate to what's new. But it's like, do you really need that? Let's start with, basics. Like, why not in the first phase do some eccentrics and some isometrics?
Yeah.
Like, it makes sense. I don't know that we necessarily need to do 4 weeks of each.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So let's finish up here with what are just some game changers this year? Like let's start with maybe what have you been reading, and then I want to just hear about basic lifestyle hacks that's helped you.
Yeah. I'm always, I always have different books. Like, I'll have like a book that's not related to training at all.
Right.
I'll have a book that's more science-based, and I'll listen to something. So right now, I'm reading a Shai Tao book on breathing. I'm actually rereading it. It's called Recognizing and Treating Breathing Disorders. I like that one a lot. Very practical based. It's by a bunch of practitioners. So it's like has a bunch of tests and evals and things like that. And I like that. So I'm trying to focus on a lot of manual skills this year, personally for me. So I'll probably take a fascial manipulation course, something like that. That's my goal for education this year. That'll be a good experience. And then like projects and things, we're just I'm continually looking to just refine movement as medicine and build certified functional strength coach and keep getting the gym. The gym's doing great. Mike's doing an amazing job, and the staff there's doing an amazing job. So just, making sure that the train stays on the tracks,
Right.
But always looking for something new. So if you have anything for me, I'll dive into that too.
Totally. Okay. Lifestyle hacks. There is one that I really liked. You get up early almost every day, and you're just committed to that. You said your father is committed to that.
Yeah.
And I love that because I've been here for 2 days and we've been up before 6 a.m. both days. Yeah. And what do you do at night to make sure that you can downregulate and get to sleep?
I did a video on this recently too, actually.
Yeah, we'll link to that as well.
Yeah. Few things. Real simple. Most people have really bad sleep hygiene. When you talk to your clients, like we know the lifestyle, like nutrition's usually a problem.
Right.
But when you look at their sleep, you'll be like, oh wow, you really don't have to figure it out. One, get rid of all the lights in the room. Like the other night, I covered that little thermostat that was over there. I covered because I'm like, I notice it.
Right.
And we know that affects melatonin release, even on a tiny little light like that.
Right.
So one, get the lights out. Get blackout shades. The shades here work great. Just pull those things dead shut. Okay. Turn the temperature down. Like 64 degrees is going to be anywhere between 60 and 68 seems to be a better temperature for people to sleep at because you end up sweating and your temperature goes up. Shower before bed. You actually get your body temperature up, but then it plummets down, so your internal temperature gets a little lower.
So hot shower.
Hot shower, and then then your body's going to cool off.
Right.
Right after. And then it's an easy hack to drop your body temperature down. And then before bed, trying to stay off the phone, computer, and if you are using blue blockers, they're like real cheap. Get them for like $10
on Amazon.
Yeah, or you put like Flux or something on your phone. Like if I need to show you, I did this thing to my phone. I don't know. Jordan Newman showed me this. I go like this.
Nice.
So it's like red.
What? And that's a Flux on for your phone.
No, so you can get there's things that'll change the color of your phone, but he had posted on his Instagram. Jordan Newman, who's intern for us and worked for us, and there's actually a way you can go on your phone and program it so that 3 clicks takes rid of all the blue lights. So it's easy. Like if I'm gonna get text at night, but if I do that, I don't feel like I'm like staring into like a bright flashlight before I go to sleep.
Right.
So those little things really do make a difference. Like I sleep really well. Melatonin, pretty much, especially when I'm traveling, changing time zones. Zinc and magnesium I take those regularly.
Right.
Those are all gonna help you sleep. So those are every night pretty much.
Cool. All right, last questions. You've been to how many countries now with CFSC?
I don't even know. A lot.
A lot?
Yeah.
Just what's the coolest country that you've been to?
I love Brazil.
Yeah?
But I'm going to Germany next week. So those are like my two. They'll both get upset if I say either are my favorite because I love both of those two places the most.
Right.
And I'm pretty the most comfortable there. Like Brazil's very beach-like. I like Germany. I like the beer. I like the people there. I have fun. But we did one with Roma in Italy with the soccer organization. That was pretty cool. That was a cool experience.
Yeah, Italy's beautiful.
Just to be in the soccer facility working with them. Like I had the opportunity to work with the Nuggets this week. So every week's like it's like another Super Bowl each time. Because like you get to meet a bunch of people, you make at your reunion, you see friends, things like that. So, I mean, they're all great. I've just been blessed with the opportunity to do all these events and meet all these people. So it's been
totally. And we're blessed with the opportunity to get Kevin on the show again. So thanks for making this happen. Run and get your flight. Good hiking yesterday, and let's keep building. I'll link to everything that Kevin mentioned. Make sure to check out his YouTube show. It's called
The Movement.
The Movement. Episode 10 coming out today. And thanks for watching. We'll see you guys soon.
Awesome.
Exactly 20.